What is the thing that surprised you the most when you traveled to a country you had never been to before? My first trip to New York. Entering the subway, someone walked in front of another person, causing them to break their stride for a fraction of a second, which led to the following exchange without pause or hesitation from either party. Shouted at each other as they walked in opposite directions. "You're an asshole. Your mother's an asshole. You don't even know who your mother is. She knows you're an asshole." Fade. Northwestern Australia. I knew it had a reputation for being ridiculously hot, but legitimately didn't know Earth got that hot and humid. I thought I was going to pass out leaving the airport. That it's possible to weave through Cairo traffic with the skill of a seasoned rally driver while driving a manual transmission car, frequently using the horn and sipping tea by holding the saucer, not the cup at the same time. Shout out to our taxi driver in Cairo. From a tropical country near the equator, I was surprised to know that the sun would set completely before 4 p.m. during winter, or having the sun still up at 10 p.m. during summer. I walked out of Penn Station when I first arrived in New York, looking up at the buildings, taking it all in, and my first interaction was with a homeless guy who shouted at me in the local accent, "Welcome to New York, asshole." It was exactly as I imagined. Iconic. The amount of eye contact and observation. When I went to Morocco, in the evening the streets would be packed full of families sitting and talking. These people would watch each other. In fact, even the way I'm describing it with watch shows how unwelcome and uncomfortable it would be in England. People would also make eye contact and keep it frequently on the street, just with ease. It felt so strange for me at first. In Prague, when you open a camera in the street, it's like a force field. People automatically move aside to not stand in the way. The incredible security in Seoul. I'm from Latin America, so I'm used to be very alert at everything, everywhere. I forgot my backpack in a small cafeteria, and after 25 minutes it was completely untouched in the same spot. You could walk at 3 a.m. with your cell phone in your hands and there'll be no fear about anything. Heated sidewalks in Finland. Absolutely lifesavers for me who had no idea how to walk on ice. No trash anywhere, either. Ashgabat, Turkmenistan. Everything about it. The entire city, every building is white marble. It lights up at night like a sterile Las Vegas. However, there is no advertising except for billboards of the dictator holding on to puppies by the neck to show everyone how nice he is. He has pretty much positioned himself as a religious prophet. The airport is shaped like a massive white marble eagle. It used to be a red building, but soon after it was built they tore it down and built a white marble one to match the current decor. Also, there is no white marble in Turkmenistan, so it has to be imported from Italy. They were the largest importer of white marble in the world and drove the price up so high it cost them ridiculous amounts of money to build the buildings. Strange place. In Thailand we were watching a movie and they played the national anthem and everyone stood up for their king. I moved to Denmark a couple of years ago, and the biggest culture shock for me was Julefrokost. Julefrokost translates to Christmas lunch, which sounds like a nice, wholesome lunch to celebrate the holidays. The first time I went to one, my husband warned me not to eat anything beforehand, because there is a lot of food. I didn't think much of it. I mean, we had Thanksgiving and the U's, so I just assumed it was a big lunch. No, we have nothing like this in the U's. Julefrokost is on an entirely different level. You see, it's a lunch only in name. What it really is sitting down at about noon and not getting up from your seat again until midnight or later. The food never stops coming. The schnapps never stop coming. It's course after course after course, and the Danes can drink you under the table any day. So combine that with strong liquor over a 12-hour stretch and you are likely to die. My first Julefrokost, I sat across from my husband's uncle, who kept my shot glass full the entire day. I was drunk by 2 p.m. and full to the point of bursting at 3 p.m. I have never been so sick as I was the day after my first Julefrokost. Hollywood is a real dump. It's filthy and not at all made of dreams. Streets definitely not paved with gold either. My wife absolutely loved California and it's her favorite place in the world so far. The last day she wanted to see Hollywood. I tried telling her. I went to the Caribbean when I was younger to some of the smaller islands, and I was shocked by the level of poverty that exists there. This was almost 20 years ago now, so could be different today, but at the time pre-internet, and being young and naive, all I'd ever seen about the Caribbean was the white sand beaches on TV, but it was quite an intense experience. I was surprised that in southern US and many other parts of it too. I'm sure you actually need a car to get anywhere, as in, it doesn't just make life easier, it's a near impossibility to go places without it, even if you're in a major city. A few years ago we went to Italy, and I made my wife go on a side trip to Herculaneum and Pompeii for a couple days. In Herculaneum we were wandering around in town when 5:00 PM rolled around, and within 15 minutes the streets were filled with people, not hurrying past one another, but just standing around talking, having an ice cream, drinking a beer, or whatever. Singapore is unbelievably clean. As soon as I stepped out of the plane, I swear I did not see a single speck of dust at their airport. Even the toilets were squeaky clean and completely dry. Every day I go out to explore the city by foot and come back to the hotel with almost no dirt on the soles of my shoes. Went to Gdańsk, Poland a few years ago with work, and I was not expecting how beautiful the place was, especially the old town. The people were friendly and the food was delicious. I then went to Krakow 2 years later and was equally impressed. Probably in Germany, when I bought a beer in a convenience store and they offered to open it for me so I could enjoy it on my walk. When I went to Berlin this threw me off. My tattoo artist took me across the street and bought me a beer, and then we walked around. It was such a neat experience. My fiance was busy in a meeting that day, so the following day I said, hey, look what we can do. And I bought us 2 beers, and then I said, now we can go walk around. She was so skeptical at first, but then we walked around Berlin, drinking beer and taking in the sights. It was such a neat experience. The way time is experienced differently. I'm from the USA, and when my dad and I fortunately had the money to go to Italy through a college program as a teen, the first thing that struck me was how laid back people were there. In a lot of places, it was a very stereotypically slowed down lifestyle, with people walking down the street, drinking during the afternoon, conversing and just causally dining outside. People didn't seem to be in a rush for anything. And while I'm sure they have their problems as well, there was much more centeredness across the country. People were much more focused on what was happening right now and what was in front of them. This was in 2008 though, so before the explosion of smartphones and social media. Amsterdam. Knew they biked, but didn't expected multi-level bike parking lots every mile. Jesus Christ, I loved it there. And don't you dare walking on our bike paths. We will ring our bell at you, loudly. When I visited Munich, Germany, I was surprised by a few things. 1. The amount of people who biked everywhere. It was a ton of people. 2. The amount of restaurants that were not Germany based, i.e. we went to an excellent South African place, sushi, and got done a full lunch every day. 3. Size of the cigarette packs. Mother duckers carrying around a Nintendo Switch sized pack. 4. The bottle returns are pretty dope. Buy 24 pack of beers, get 1/3 of your money back by returning the bottled. American by the way. The gondola ride in Venice. Not what I expected with the smelly waters, the crashing gondolas with the drivers cursing each other in Italian. Nothing romantic about it. In Egypt, Cairo, there are times when the electricity goes out every hour. Also, there's KFC in front of the Sphinx. London streets having huge differences from block to block. Like, my daughter moved there and so we spent a weekend helping her apartment roommate hunt, and so ended up walking around London a lot. We'd be in some beautiful living area with little dog parks and nice playgrounds. Round a corner and hit what was obviously by all the drug street. Walk a bit more, and you're in a business area with super clean streets and well manicured grass areas. Hit the next street, and get ready for the smell of piss and beer. Sort of wild, not to say other cities can't be like this. Where I'm in Budapest can be. But the changes between city blocks right next to each other felt jarring. I'm English, and noticed the same thing when I moved to London. I think it's because London is literally 1,000s of smaller towns, each with their own history, and they just kinda became one big city. I went to Singapore a couple years back. What really caught me off guard is that, although everyone speaks English, it's one of 4 official languages. They have this strong Indo-Malay accent, and I was really struggling to understand everyone. I can understand thick Japanese accents pretty well, so I was not expecting that. The smells of a different country. I'm from Australia, and traveled to Malaysia a few years back. The city, the jungle, everything smelled different to any place in Australia. How cheap and efficient the subway train system is in Seattle. I grew up in Toronto, and taking the train 30 minutes east to Union and back is like 10.40 each way, and the subway is almost 4 per ride. When I went to Korea, it was like 1.25 cents to ride from one end to the other. Could be on that train for 2 hours. And if you get off the train for 30 minutes or less, they don't charge you to get back on. I was there for 14 days. Took the subway every day. Multiple different tracks and stops. Spent less than 30. On top of that, they come like every 5 or 10 minutes. Everything is very clean. Extremely well lit. I never saw a single altercation, and it's so damn easy to get around there. The sense of safety in Japan. I had expected some level of safety, but was blown away by how you could literally leave a purse on a park bench and no one would take it. You could walk late at night and feel safe. At Tokyo Disney, we had a stroller for our then nearly 2-year-old. Happily left it outside each ride with a bag full of our stuff with complete confidence that it would be exactly as we left it. Also how willingly everyone engaged with our nearly 2-year-old. We expected some kawaii gushing, and we got it, especially from schoolgirls. But everyone would stop to say hello, or distract her if she was grumpy. The best 2 memories I have are of an elderly man on the train playing peekaboo with her, and another elderly man pinching her cheeks and telling us she looked exactly like a Cupid doll. How impenetrable some American accents are. I'm a native English speaker, but being in New York made me feel like everyone was speaking a different language. Also, how unsocial and lonely Sweden felt. In Ireland, it's not uncommon to make small talk with strangers. If you pass someone on the road, when walking you're usually expected to smile at them at the least. It's the complete opposite in Sweden, I think. People seem not to acknowledge each other, or try not to draw any attention at all to themselves if they're in public. A local explained that if he goes to a bus stop and sees someone else already there, he would wait at least 5 meters away, even if it was raining and the stop was the only shelter. It felt very odd to me. I visited Scotland and off-leash dogs were everywhere. I love dogs, so this is awesome. But it was interesting for sure. While waiting for the train, some guy was with his dog, and when it boarded he just did some whistling, and the dog ran right onto the train. Straight out of a stereotype, but I shit you not, it happened. The average height in Thailand. I'm a pretty big dude, but I was still pretty surprised when I could watch over an ocean of people. Visit Montenegro. You will feel exactly a bit below average height. China. Almost every store and vendor, including street food and vegetable stalls, use mobile payment. England and France. Traveled to England from France via boat. Then I wanted to return to mainland Europe to go somewhere else. Noticed a train option. Discovered there is a horrifying tube in the ocean that a train goes through to connect the UK and mainland Europe. The next day, I found myself alone in a train car, surrounded by darkness as I was speeding through the ocean. I don't know what I was expecting, lol, maybe a clear tube like aquariums, where you can look at the fish, but the darkness was scary as duck. Also, don't judge me for not knowing this beforehand. I was just a high schooler at the time, lol. American. Grew up in a desert climate. Visited Scotland at age 12. Green grass, real grass, was and still is one of the craziest things I ever have had the experience of seeing. At home, only 3-4 houses in the neighborhood had grass, and you'd be lucky if it was under 80% brown and yellow most of the time, due to the fact that we couldn't run the sprinklers because of the drought we had been in since before I was born. As soon as we flew over Scotland in the plane, there was just so much green everywhere, even around the cities and the highways. I had extreme anxiety of flying over the ocean for the first time, and a fear of heights in general, but I was glued to that window for the rest of that flight. I've never been back, and I haven't seen grass anywhere close to that green since. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.